At the McAllen, Texas airport, a South Texas border city, President Joe Biden's Department of Homeland Security carries out a secretive operation that looks like this. Charter buses pull up to a back airport entrance, like at another airport 35 miles away in Harlingen, and in nearby Brownsville, Texas, too. These three idling chartered buses are filled with migrant women and children from Guatemala. Plainclothes U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers in unmarked trucks open the restricted gate and lead the buses onto the tarmac. And to an unmarked chartered World Atlantic Airlines jet paid for by the U.S. government. The agents direct the migrants out and into the passenger jet, up the walkway. At least 150 migrants here. They are all being deported by air to Guatemala City under a September 2021 agreement between the two nations. Many observers of the mass migration border crisis might have assumed the Biden administration was allowing migrant women and children to stay in America after illegally crossing the border. That was certainly the case for the administration's first 6 months and continues at some level, but that's not strictly what's happening anymore. So what is happening here, and what's the significance to the most voluminous mass migration crisis in recorded U.S. history? What you are seeing here is only a small part of what appears to be a very significant air repatriation operation that Biden and his supporters criticized and scuttled as cruel and inhumane when Donald Trump was doing it. This jet will return to Texas and pick up load after load after load, 3, 4, and even 6 times a week. Just from November 15 through the end of November, this one plane alone flew 10 loads of migrants to Guatemala City, and the day after that, and the day after that. And so will a fleet of other jets that are contracted to the branch of DHS called ICE Air, which is running the huge new deportation machine largely out of public sight. Other planes like this Swift Air jet also at McAllen Airport, or at Harlingen and Brownsville airports, fill with Hondurans and El Salvadorans, and are flown deep into southern Mexico, to Tapachula or Villahermosa, where the Mexican government loads them onto buses and drives them southward to their home countries under a separate agreement with the Biden administration.
This is a plane arriving with deportees from McAllen, Texas. This is another woman right there going down. You see her right there arriving to the bus. There is another woman going down right there, female. It's incredible, all women.
All of these migrants only a short time earlier had illegally crossed the nearby southern border. On news that President Biden was giving legal papers to almost any family with children and shepherding them into the American interior to live and work just as they had hoped. This practice spurred the mass migration of families to historic heights. But in July 2021, after 6 months of sharp escalation, the numbers hit all-time highs of 200,000 plus apprehensions per month. Political polls showed that the mass migration crisis at the southern border was becoming a serious political liability, only a year ahead of the midterm elections. Whether by coincidence or plan to get control of this politically debilitating number, the very next month the Biden administration turned to Trump's highly deterring air repatriation solution on what appears to be a sizable scale. It has targeted the most numerous of the migrants crossing in family groups, Central Americans and Haitians. The flights under Trump, after all, had proved highly effective at deterring further migration. Who back in home countries, after all, wants to spend thousands in smuggling fees on trips that end right back home? It's unclear how many Central American migrants the Biden administration has flown home, but the numbers must be substantial, judging from public flight tracking databases, a pilot, and other sources. In August and September, the administration ramped up the flights to numbers far greater than during Trump's last year or two in office, according to the anti-deportation group Witness at the Border, which claims to track ICE air repatriation flights. The group says there were 192 removal flights in September, including ones that sent 8,500 Haitians back to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and another 139 in October, both of which were the highest volumes in nearly 2 years. If each flight held 150 migrants, the math shows that nearly 50,000 were flown home in just September and October. For instance, between August and the last week of November 2021, this Swift Air jet flew more than 65 repatriation flights to southern Mexico, Guatemala City, and Honduras, flight records show, or 9,750. Both of these jets flew dozens of deportation missions to Haiti during the Del Rio, Texas migrant camp crisis. Have the flights worked at deterring Central Americans and Haitians? The public record shows at least a coincidence of declining apprehensions at the southern border, by nearly 30,000 fewer in October than in September, and some 8,000 fewer in September than in August, when the flights started. U.S. Customs and Border Protection data shows the nationalities that decreased the most were Haitians and Central Americans. In many ways, the Biden administration's policy approaches toward illegal immigration is confusing for its inconsistencies. It lets in thousands of migrant families while flying home thousands of families. Both policies have critics and opponents. But the administration's air repatriation program has been kept mostly under wraps, probably because it is politically fraught. Advocates of mass illegal migration hammered the administration for flying home thousands of Haitians from Del Rio, while never mentioning that the administration also is flying home large numbers of other nationalities to southern Mexico and Central America. That might explain why there's no government insignia on agents, buses, or the planes. How you doing? By the same token, immigration restrictionists, highly critical of the administration for fomenting the mass migration, have yet to account for the Biden administration's pragmatic use of a Trump-era policy they liked very much, regardless of its political purpose.